Electromagnetic fields, they are everywhere and harmful not only because of their ionizing radiation, but also for their ability to activate all sorts of pathogens, including yeast, fungus, mold, bacteria, and even parasites. Our guest today is a board certified aesthetic nurse specialist returning for a second appearance. And we're going to discuss the relationship between toxins, parasites, as well as her tricks for cleansing parasites for healthier skin. This is the story of EMFs, blue light, and parasites with Rachel Varga. Rachel, great to have you back on.
Wonderful to be here. I'm so excited to reconnect with you, Casper. You are easily one of my favorite souls and voices in the space of health, wellness, and living our best lives. I'm thrilled to talk about some of my recent research, which was, hold on for a moment to something. A bit of a rude awakening for myself too, with some of my heavy metal toxin reports from a previous home I was in, and environmental stressors, environmental toxins, air, water, lighting, electromagnetics, and all these fun organisms.
Well, let's get into that.
Key to mitigate.
Yeah. I'm excited because you have the research out, and unfortunately, it sounds like you had to go through this, which so many do. We need to experience things to really, I think, go through them. That's why I'm so big on experiential medicine meets evidence-based, right? So that's a big thing of mine. But listen, parasites were trendy for a while on social media. It was going, and people are looking and blaming everything out there. Before we go into this kind of connection between EMF and parasites, I wanted to hear, what's your preferred way of even testing for parasites to understand if somebody has them? Because so many people may be asking themselves, well, I think I might have them, but how would I know?
Don't bother testing. Parasitologists, 30 to 40 year parasitologists, what they say and what they postulate is that about 80% of the North American population have parasites. If you have a dog, you probably have parasites. If you have horses, you probably have parasites. If you ever swim in fresh running water, you probably have parasites. If you eat leafy greens, you probably have parasites. If you walk barefoot outside, you probably have parasites. If you breathe,
it's kind of wild, right? It's so many things we think of, and those can lead to parasites. And I completely agree with you. This is, something my own father has told me, like, earthing is cool, but just beware a little bit. There are parasites in the ground that will go right through your skin. Like, that is a thing, but please go on.
Yes. And some of the things that I've seen with clients over the years, if they are struggling with seemingly aging overnight, they've lost a lot of weight, or they even have resistance to weight loss, they are prone to eczema, psoriasis, different skin rashes, losing hair, central nervous system disorders or dysregulation. And just knowing that something is a little off, say they have any type of GI disturbance, right? Gut, digestion type of disturbance. Just assume you have them and have regular practices monthly, every quarter, to do cleanses where you're basically bringing yourself into a highly alkaline state with what you're eating and consuming different antiparasitic herbs and sometimes medications. You can get pretty technical with this. And I hate to say this, but a lot of practitioners really don't know how to properly address parasites. So if you find a practitioner that is highly experienced in actually reducing parasites in their clients and have been doing it for many years, that's a really good sign. If they're kind of like, here, do this 2-week cleanse and Bob's your uncle, then I would be a little bit more, I might continue to look around.
Yeah.
But it is something that I recommend is incorporated into your monthly routine, your quarterly routine, and even taking certain antiparasitic herbs all of the time to be on top of it. And just know that every time you talk, you share air with someone, you shake hands, you are eating food. I'm not saying this to make you paranoid. I'm saying this to help you reduce, and in other aspects as well, your overall oxidative stress status through environmental toxic burdens. If you have Lyme's disease, a scientific roundtable conversation that I've been a part of for many, many years, well over 1,000 healthcare practitioners, we tune in each week. About 70% of Lyme's disease, that pathogen itself is in the parasite. So you clear the parasite, you clear the pathogen. And there are many reasons why this isn't highlighted. It's almost like getting to the root cause is just going to work so well. And it seems too simple to be true. This is something that's just brushed under the rug. So any type of skin condition, hair loss, brain fog, stress, hormonal dysregulation, gut disturbances, just assume you have them and take regular precautions and cleansing routines into consideration.
Yeah, really good advice. And I feel like, when you look at pathogens on a whole, you have a lot of people focusing, of course, right now on viruses. That's the big one. But bacteria, as you just mentioned, Lyme Borrelia is a bacteria infection. And then you have mold, of course, you know that because so many people live in moldy areas and have mold toxicity now. It's a big issue. Parasites get overlooked. And the truth of the matter is you could take stool samples and test them and you could miss them. You could absolutely miss them. It isn't a foolproof type of test at all. And a lot of people have them. Like you said, in Lyme, it's co-infectious disease always. Always you're going to have extra friends around Borrelia. And a lot of the times you're right, Giardia and other parasites show up there if you really know what you're looking for and you're a trained practitioner as well. Now, you mentioned you're going to have GI symptoms most likely. And those GI symptoms may lead into things like brain fog and other. But I found it interesting too that you linked it also to the skin. Can you go in a little bit more about how parasites really do impact our skin and our look, aesthetics, and our aging process?
Absolutely. Well, when I first started to clear parasites, and let's be totally transparent, it took me from about March last year to December last year. Mm-hmm. That's how long it took. And granted, I'm an outdoor enthusiast. Yes, I was drinking a fresh mountain waterfall water, doing my cold plunges, all of that. So I know where it was coming from. It's being an outdoor enthusiast. So, it comes with the territory, no pun intended. One of my clients was a doctor herself, and she sought a one-on-one session with me to talk about skin and rejuvenation and discuss the different rejuvenation options for at home and in clinic. And she told me that she was working in a hospital setting and she had someone grab her arm who they knew had active parasites. And then she started to develop these skin issues on her torso and arm. And she actually sought care from another colleague. And she's like, I think I have parasites. And her colleague then wanted to refer her for a psychiatric assessment. So the last thing you want to do is show up to a practitioner and say, I think I have worms. Get the creepy crawlies underneath my skin. That's why it's really important to work with practitioners that really understand this and aren't going to go to the stigmatized route of, it's just in third world countries. So it's really sad for me to see this in a physician going to another physician and saying, I think you need a psychiatric assessment. So that was one of the times that I really was clued into the fact that more attention needs to be placed on this. Also, Morgellons disease could very well be, it's like skin irritation, acne type of looking pustules on the skin, could easily be confused as acne or adult acne. And then someone's placed on Accutane or antibiotics and all these really harsh topical creams, when really they could have had better success if they did a parasite cleanse. The other really interesting thing that I noticed myself was when I started to clear them, I actually had visual disturbances. So I was watching a movie and I was seeing flashes on my periphery, which tells me I had central nervous system, likely cysts as well. So being a nurse myself, researching this stuff, I was really noticing absolutely everything. And then about a month after I started the cleanse, I felt like I had started popping limitless. The energy that I had was profound, the mental clarity. And the funny thing is you clear the parasites, you clear the toxins, you look at your life completely differently because your brain is working better, which then led me to completely transform and transition every aspect of my personal and professional life because I was seeing things more clearly and seeing how I can function in a way that's highest and best supports myself and others. I did very much like the benefits after clearing parasites on my nails. I just cut them recently. So I'm back home here and I got my Gibson Les Paul that's calling my name to play guitar, but typically they're quite long. And my nails have never looked healthier. They don't have any ridges. They aren't cracking. They aren't peeling. And even the cuticles are much healthier too. So the impacts that I've seen on my nails from clearing pathogens has been quite remarkable also.
That's amazing. I mean, the improvements you could get from these things that you just don't think about. And so many people, you're right, suffer from this. And I was even talking to somebody over dinner recently and asked, how can you get improvement so quickly by this idea of just detoxifying or changing the inner milieu? And it's because you have things that thrive in different environments. Parasites, bacteria, all these pathogens thrive in a disturbed and unkempt, dirty environment in a sense. And if you clean that out, you start to see how many changes come about and how good you can feel and how those things are really impacting you. And we all do at one point or another really suffer from those in a sense. So you got to, really be proactive with it. It sounds like you were, and you got, such great results from it. But now let's bring in that other aspect of EMF and parasites. Because listen, I'm sitting around a bunch of EMF emitting things right now. I got my shungite and other things, but still, we all are just bombarded. We don't see these things, but the radiation coming off of electrical devices that basically make up all our lives impact us greatly. I think it was Dr. Mindy Beck, who's a specialist in this, called them bully toxins. They go into our body and they bully us around and give us bad communication. So we kind of get disturbed cell-to-cell communication and regeneration. But I want to hear, how does EMF actually impact parasites and what can we start to do about it?
Great question. In my research, which my paper is all about environmental toxins in air, water, lighting, electromagnetics, and parasites, and how the modern aesthetic practitioner can start to bring these topics into the assessment conversation. Because I look at my colleagues that are doing stem cells and exosomes, and they have much more rigorous patient screening. And I want to see a reduction in adverse events from skin rejuvenation and see people have better long-term outcomes, which is why I'm writing this paper, is to kind of disrupt the aesthetics industry just a little bit and get them up to speed with what some of the more high-level functional practitioners are doing by screening the different environmental toxins that could be present. Now, in my research, I was able to find two really interesting pieces of information. First one, I'm not going to say this to scare you, but it is worthwhile to talk about why this paper is so important. I love to look at federal statistics. And in Canada, we have what's called Stats Canada. And at the start of, the world completely changing a couple of years ago, I was like, I want to see what the data has to say. So I waited patiently for the analysis of mortality rates and all these things between especially those years of 2019 to 2020. And typically that data is published for the year before in November. And then there was a lag. It wasn't published until late February. I was like, this is strange. So I reached out to them and blah, blah, blah. Finally, the data was released late. Now, for the data set, mortality rates by type in Canada, from 2019 to 2020, there was a signal. And that signal was in the category of death of unknown cause. Then reached out for further clarification because that signal doubled. And all the other mortality rates pretty well actually remained stable, including respiratory deaths. I was like, what is the signal that doubled? Brought it up to the scientific roundtable I'm a part of as well. And we were hashing it out, things like that. I think this is the autoimmune stuff. I think this is the environmental toxin stuff. So basically, that category, mortality rates by type, death of unknown cause, is someone just simply doesn't have a diagnosis. They maybe pass away before having a diagnosis, or they don't know what to put their finger on and call it as. So that's definitely something that I think was worthwhile to address in the opening of my paper. And just knowing that environmental toxins are resulting in something very interesting. And this is the increase in oxidative stress status. You'll hear me talk about this on the Rachel Varga podcast, which you've been on as well, Casper. This toxic bucket theory. If this toxic bucket gets too full, it'll tip over. You'll have brain fog, you'll have skin disturbances, acne, melasma, accelerated aging, hair loss, hormonal dysregulation, and metabolic dysfunction. So that's what the oxidative stress status is. And some practitioners are better at assessing this and monitoring this than others. So essentially, when our oxidative stress status or a toxic bucket gets too full, tips over. Okay. Now, for those of us who have higher levels of toxins in this toxic bucket, that can actually, another piece of research I found in looking at EMFs in the blood and the body, is that when we're more toxic, we can actually become more electromagnetically hypersensitive. Now, I did also find an interesting piece of data. I think this is about 5-6 years ago. So I always felt a little sensitive to the EMFs, having to do off-grid days, 200 miles out of cell reception, once or twice a week to ground and all that stuff to the blood. It all comes down to the blood. And I saw on another federal website that it was postulated, this was a while ago, this is probably 2015, that about 15% of the population was considered electromagnetically hypersensitive. That was before 5G. I think that's back when we had 3G. So essentially what we're seeing happen with convenience, which yes, you said convenience is essentially killing us, it's messing with the blood. And when we're doing live blood cell analysis, we can see that the red blood cells there's some morphology happening. The red blood cells aren't smooth. The exterior lining of the red blood cell should be nice and smooth, and it should bounce off other red blood cells with having balanced electromagnetic interactions. Now, what happens if we're on our phone for 5 minutes? They start to stick together, form chains called rouleau. And then we're also seeing these really interesting structures in the blood that is pretty recent. It can be related to, something that someone took. It could be related to EMFs. It could be parasites. People are really looking into this stuff right now because they're seeing different structures in the blood. And it's all about looking at the blood. It's all about looking at that red blood cell, because that red blood cell carries oxygen and nutrients to tissues. The largest organ of the body is the skin. So if we want great skin, grounding the body and the blood and reducing EMFs is first and foremost. If you want great hair growth, have good blood flow. If you want good sexual function, have good blood flow. If you want your brain to work properly, have good blood flow. If you want your nails to grow nice and strong, have good blood flow. If you want the energy to live your life's purpose and live a joy-filled, exciting life in the highest, have good blood flow. So contacting the earth, 30 to 45 minutes a day, you do this all the time. I love seeing your social and doing this, is one of the easiest things that you can do. Keep your phone on airplane mode in a Faraday pouch. That works well too. Turn your router off. Personally, I do notice a huge difference in my off-grid days with my skin a couple of days later, looking more dewy, looking more clear, which is related to better blood flow. When I'm traveling around and in different places where, if you say, for example, compare California to Florida, and I actually looked at this when I was thinking of attending a specific conference. So I just did a conference in West Palm Beach. There were about 700 cell towers in like a 3-mile radius. You can search this stuff. And then in Beverly Hills, there were 2,100 cell towers in a 3-mile radius. So different places will have different amounts of EMFs. And if you are sensitive, something to consider is that maybe your toxic bucket is a little too full and your body's having difficulty managing that additional stressor. So what do? This is where biohacking comes in, to purify our air, water, lighting, electromagnetics, and regular detoxing. It's actually really simple, but it's just knowing where to start and how to start off as a beginner, and then some of the advanced biohacking stack practices.
Yeah, there's so many things out there that can help us with this. And we got to understand that Each bucket's a little bit different, right? Because we're all unique in our ways to how we handle it, what we were born with those buckets. But no matter what you do, you're getting drops in the bucket. You're just breathing air, you're getting drops in. So you got to be proactive to remove those and limit those as much as possible. Now, one of the things that I've been diving deep into the rabbit hole recently is photobiomodulation, this idea of light therapy, right? And I've loved it. My father was doing this stuff in the 80s and doing research into low-level light therapy and all sorts of things that always fascinated me. Lasers and putting lights on the body and seeing it heal differently and understanding it's actually being absorbed into the body. And you talk about blue light. So I want to have you talk about what is the significance in all of this and the research you're showing that you put out there in your paper. Where does blue light fit into all this?
Absolutely. Well, this paper, I'm telling you, it's like an 11-page robust paper. Took on a life of its own, right? Okay, so the photobiomodulation, love this stuff. There's actually some excellent tech that I actually dropped in an interview, episode 668 with Dave Asprey. He's a good friend of mine, actually both from the same island here. There's actually a laser in rejuvenation that can make the skin cells behave younger. And what it's doing is it's actually adjusting the epigenetics or the cellular expression of the skin cell. Pretty cool. So it's a Stanford study. It looked at 50-year-old skin cells before treatment and then after treatment with this laser, and then saw what was happening afterwards, that the skin cells were behaving more like 30-year-olds. So this is incredible. So we can not only see more youthfulness with cells with things like photobiomodulation, with things like potentially exosomes and stem cells, and with things like reducing our environmental stressors and exposure to toxins and things. However, in my research, UV and blue light both create phototoxicity. Okay. So I love the sun. I take specific supplements to allow me to be outside for longer. I even recently did some research with melanotan, more on that later. But essentially, I'm what you would consider a Fitzpatrick skin type 2. Traditionally, in the past, I would go in the sun and burn in about 5-10 minutes. Then I started to clean up my act with biohacking a number of years ago. Take really potent antioxidants, superoxide dismutase, really following actually immune supportive protocol with NAC, quercetin, zinc, green tea extract, all sorts of good things, adaptogens. And I was like, whoa, here I am in Florida or somewhere else in the South. Like I did a 5 to 7 day long fast also in Sedona in Utah. And that totally changed my body, got me in a beautiful autophagy state, completely changed my brain, my physical form, got rid of all those senescent cells, that extra little bit of weight, looking pretty nice and trim and shredded, although very feminine. And I started to notice I could be outside for longer, which is interesting. So my body was better able to handle the oxidative stress, the reactive oxidative species on the skin caused by UV. But what the research shows is that both UV and blue light both create oxidative stress to the skin. Now, the issue with blue light is that we're literally in front of it all day. So one of the things I've started doing is recording episodes in front of a window instead of my studio lighting and wearing different blue light blocking glasses all of the time. Wiring the home to be more circadian rhythm balancing. Just don't do it with Bluetooth because then that's going to increase your EMFs. Using more candle light is really important. And wearing your skincare with antioxidants, like antioxidants and peptides in your serum and moisturizer, and mineral-only sunscreen, and taking certain supplements to support the skin to manage that phytotoxicity. We all know skin cancer, things like that. Some of the more benign things that pop up on the skin from UV and blue light, loss of elastin and collagen due to the fibroblasts not behaving as youthfully as they would like to, fellow exosomes and stem cells. That's what they can do is support the scaffolding. Then you can start to see scarring of red acne spots, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, sunspots, age spots, melasma. All these things can happen through UV and also blue light. So the other easy thing with blue light in your home, switch out all of your LED lights to halogen or incandescent. It's
Mhm.
going to cost you more. It's not going to be as cost and energy efficient, but convenience these days
Yeah.
are, I hate to say it, killing us. So just some easy mitigation tactics there.
Yeah, for sure. I love that one with the bulbs itself because people don't realize that we go to these LEDs. They are completely in the blue light spectrum, really. And we're using them at light and they're just awful for aging, for all these things. You know, T.S. Wiley called them the ultimate endocrine disruptor. And we've just made them worse over the years. That's why full spectrum ones are great. Incandescent are still good, even though they're trying to take it off the market. It's like most of the stuff they're trying to take off the market is better for us than what they're trying to get us to use. And it's all in the guise of like more energy efficient. Like that's great, but we're killing ourselves. So there's a little bit.
We're seeing parallel systems form. It's happened before.
Yes. And this goes. And you brought up this idea of melatonin. What is it? Melatonin, not melatonin.
Melanotan.
Yes,
Yeah,
there it is.
It's a peptide.
Yeah. No, I've heard people bring it up before. I don't know too much about, but inform us of that.
Well, I mean, I do consider myself a biohacker, so I wouldn't be much of a biohacker if I hadn't tried out the whole peptide situation.
There's a lot, right? I mean, and it's crazy how this one is actually like a more normal name, but it's like BPC 157, CJ, all these other ones that are just the names of robots in Star Wars, basically. And they're like thousands of peptides now, but talk specifically about this one.
Yeah, melanotan is really interesting. So it was initially researched in the 90s as a skin cancer prevention drug. And of course, what I talk about here is not medical advice, educational information only. If you think you have a medical condition, you must seek the guidance of a licensed physician. So here's the deal. Peptides are still under kind of like this research fringe type of space. However, there are a number of longevity clinics, primarily on, I would say, the East Coast of North America, that are integrating peptides into their practices. So I'm really interested in this stuff because here we have functional clinics that are using products like melanotan to develop more of a tan. It's called the Barbie peptide. It makes you more tanned because it stimulates more melanin in the skin. It's an appetite suppressant and it's a libido enhancer. It also has different properties to function as reducing oxidative stress in the body as well. So it does a couple of things. It works on 4 major pathways. And so that's melanotan. That's how it's melanotan is another more technical way of talking about it, but it's essentially a peptide. And the barrier of entry here is that it's injected. So a lot of people don't want to do injectables at home. It's very similar to what diabetics do to inject their own insulin. It's still pretty fringe, but clinics are prescribing it and it should be prescribed. You don't want to be getting it from some shady websites where you might also get a computer virus from. And then we have PT141. PT141 is essentially a derivative of melanotan. It is, I believe, FDA approved for sexual health. So you have Viagra, you have Cialis that work physically on blood flow. And then you have PT141 that has that impact, but it also has the impact on the central nervous system for bonding and intimacy. So very interesting. So some of the caveats with melanotan and PT141 is that it can cause nausea. So there are some things. I just did an interview with Susan Brandt, and she's like, yeah, I tried PT141. She's the sexual teacher to the millions. It's really fun energy. Couldn't do it. Made me nauseous. It's going to be different for everybody. It's still pretty fringe. So there are some things to play around with dosing wise. Now, the other thing that's also kind of fringe right now still is stem cells and exosomes.
Yeah,
so that's one of the other things I wanted to talk about that I've talked about in my paper because I see where we were in the 1990s with products like Botox and fillers. And then where we are now with stem cells and exosomes. Having been in a room of 40 of the top stem cell docs, I would say in North America, hearing them talking, they're trialing things out, looking at different products, looking at different protocols, applications, outcomes, photography, quantitative, qualitative analysis. This is where we were in the 90s with rejuvenation injectables. So I'm seeing some really cool overlaps, and I'm here to really bring the two worlds together because I think there's some stuff here for us to pay attention to.
So you're a fan of exosomes?
Well, here's the issue. Here's the issue I have with exosomes.
Yeah.
Is that it does come from perinatal tissue.
Mhm.
I've been able to hop on some calls with some medical researchers, medical scientists, and here's the thing with adipose-derived stem cells, which is through tumescent liposuction. So someone comes in for liposuction, like, hey, we can send your stem cells, your fat off to a lab, they'll centrifuge it, and then by gravity, everything else will be extracted from it, come back. We'll maybe put it in your hairline for hair growth or into the face to stimulate scaffolding to the skin, revolumizing, things like that. And there's a huge screening process with that with each individual client. And it's not a drug because it's homologous. Okay. And it hasn't been amplified. Amplification is what can lead to mutations. And we saw issues with amplifications with different testing. Probably know what I'm talking about there. Yeah. I'm sure you know what's up. And so here's the thing with exosomes is that it's derived from perinatal tissue. So a lot of times when a woman is giving birth in the hospital, that cord and that placenta will then be captured and then sold. So I do have some issues with that. So right now I'm in the initial research stages of looking at things. The thing with the adipocyte-derived stem cells, which I like, is that there's huge screening. Okay. So if, say, anyone's taken an experimental medication, they're out. They can't use their fat stem cells for themselves or other people. Huge screening processes. But not so much in the exosome space. Well, there could be. However, I'm seeking clarification on this. I'm really excited to see where these two applications are going. It's still pretty new. It's still pretty fringe. I do think it's a future element to rejuvenation just because of the, I postulate more long-term benefits than some of these in-clinic injectables that, I've performed 20,000 plus rejuvenation procedures. Mm-hmm. And you see something, oh, interesting. This could actually help more with the scaffolding, be homologous. And if we're screening our patients right, we should be seeing less adverse events.
Yeah, I'm with you that I'm really excited to see where this goes. I really don't know what the future will be for things like exosomes, peptides, nanotechnologies and everything that we're starting to incorporate within medicine and within, I would say, even more integrative medicine and regenerative and anti-aging medicine. But it's exciting to see any kind of things start to, be dynamic and change and evolve as we evolve. So I think, like everything, we'll have a lot more options and a lot more research and data to show are these what many people are saying are the future of medicine. I'm
going to be part of a really exciting study.
Oh, can you spill a little bit about that, or is that on the hush?
The process is top secret at this moment in time. However, it's basically looking at how I think some of these products can be used. Okay. So as a researcher, you can kind of be a little bit of a disruptor. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that because it's always been well received by my colleagues. They're really excited for me to publish papers on these things in aesthetic nursing and aesthetic medicine. Because right now, it's been very separate with the functional side of stuff, with the docs who have gone from allopathic Western trained to more of the functional side. And now they're kind of marrying the two. So it's kind of reducing the stigma around that and be like, hey, these are going to be options. Here's some before and after photos of whether or not my postulated techniques and applications are going to work or not. You have to do the photography analysis. I do really want to talk about the other things here. So you've talked a lot about mold and heavy metal toxins. Did you know that most of your heavy metal exposure comes from the air that you breathe? Mm.
These days, I could actually believe that. I didn't know that. There's so many ways, of course, that you do that, but so much is in the air, right? And I mean, again, these kind of more nanoparticle, but also aluminum, like all these heavy metals are in a gaseous state in the air. But tell us more about that.
All right. So previously, I was living in a 1930s home. We were doing some renovations. I had my air purifiers going nonstop. I'm of reproductive age and am excited to start family with the right man. I've been in an active preconception stage for the last 2 years. That's why, my stem cell buddies, they want my exosomes. They'll pay me top dollar for it. It's pretty funny conversations, actually.
I'm sure those are quite comical to listen to, although probably quite serious for them. Yeah.
Oh, they're very serious. Okay, so here's the deal. I had air purifiers in every single room, really watching my exposure when carpets were getting ripped up, when walls were opened up. And my partner at the time, bless his heart, would unplug my air purifiers when I wasn't looking. Drove me crazy. So here we go. And then he ended up keeping them. So he really needed them, clearly, because the home, after I left, right before I left, I actually did a heavy metal test and a mold toxin test. It was a through urinalysis. Get this, from that house, before I left, I knew I just had to go. There's something in that whole situation that just wasn't right for me anymore. And that's okay. What was it? We had mold, 3 different types of mold, pesticides. So mold from the house, pesticides from the golf course across the street. And then the 2 heavy metals, I believe, was lead. So from lead paint from the older home, and also then mercury. And on the island here, we've had just terrible forest fires. Every year it gets a little bit worse. So it's not just trees burning, it's like houses burning and all these other things. So all these volatile organic compounds in the air, when they get breathed in, they accumulate in the body, heavy metals, and they mess with your central nervous system so that you can experience a cognitive decline, as well as protein misfolding diseases, prion diseases that can happen downstream, reproductive stuff. There's also linkages to if the mother has high levels of, I believe it's lead or mercury or both. In my report, it actually said that there can be a correlation to higher rates of autism. So this is definitely something that I get to my girlfriend's house after I left that situation before I even had my results back. And I was in that sauna twice a day. We're talking 45 minutes twice a day, listening to my body, pumping those adaptogens, all these different supplements that I have. I sell myself, right, as a practitioner. And I just listen to my body, detox, Epsom salts bath with magnesium, baking soda, some borax in there. It's great, super old school way to reduce radiation, get that grounding in, reduce that stress. I'd be curious to see what my toxin levels are now, having been a couple months from that. So air is really important, not only for the integration of heavy metals and toxins into the body, but also superficially on the skin. So that's why you want to be washing the face, not just with a splash of water, but actually using a proper cleanser that I can recommend for you morning and night, with that double cleanse in the evening. That first cleanse is removing dirt, oil, debris, cosmetic creams, mold, pollution in the air, any makeup, which I don't think you're wearing, Casper, but I might be.
None today.
And then the second cleanse is actually washing the face. So that double cleanse in the evening is really important. And rinsing off. I actually really like to bathe or shower morning and night, and then use some nice body oil, avocado. So you're always a silky smooth.
Great. Listen, the truth of the matter is you always got to be cleansing inside and out, right? It's just so damn important. And you got to know what you're doing. Like, a lot of people think it's like cleansing with like Dove body wash with fragrance that have phthalates and all kinds of crap in it. And they're like, how could it be bad if it's on the shelves? It's like 95% of what's on the shelves is killing you slowly. Like, don't have that attitude. If it's on the shelf, it must be good. Like, no. And it smells good. Like, that's
going Whole Foods now, canola oil and everything.
Everything. Oh. Like, and listen, you gotta, like, I kind of understand if you're a true capitalist with shareholders and your fiduciary duty is to maximize profits. That is literally your legal obligation. why wouldn't you cut costs on things, add in things that are toxic, but actually get people addicted in some ways? So you get bigger profits from it. It's a cheaper product. You put it on the shelf. You market even as organic and everything. A lot of these things, you don't even have to say what's on it. The ingredient label list doesn't have to show you exactly everything. So, there's too much out there for us not to really sit down and be like, all right, how do I mitigate that? How do I get it out of me? And that's something you're doing, which is lovely from the inside out. So can you talk about kind of your services and what you offer people?
Absolutely love to. First, in my research, guess what else I found out about water?
Oh, no.
The PVC piping that delivers the water from the water treatment plant that's, using chemicals to treat viruses and bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
I think they forgot about parasites. That's a whole other topic. And then the water goes from the water treatment plant to the home in the form of a drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
The PVC piping contains phthalates.
Yeah.
So when we are doing a really good job of avoiding toxins in our skincare, parabens, phthalates, sulfates, artificial dyes, fragrances, not testing on animals, that are really well priced, that have excellent actives like hyaluronic acid, vitamin C, retinol, glutathione, vitamin B complex, all sorts of ingredients. We not only want our skincare and personal care products, such as deodorants, toothpaste, hair care, body care, skincare, makeup, all these things, and our supplements, we want them to be free of parabens, phthalates, sulfates, artificial dyes, fragrances. But we also want them to work and to be at a reasonable price point. So essentially what I've done on my e-store, I've been working with practitioner grade skincare since 2011. I see what my clients keep coming back for. I have an e-store where every single thing you possibly need, from grooming to skincare to body care to hair growth stimulating products that are from like 1970s bark that just works tremendously well for hair growth stimulation. That's dirt cheap. It's all on my e-store, as well as dermal rollers and other copper peptides and things like that. So use the promo code INNOMED, INNO MED, for 15% off site-wide on my e-store, and also a one-on-one session with me, which you can book at rachelvarga.ca. The one-on-one session is where we can really talk about your skin goals. I can get into details and nuances of what things in your environment could be precipitating aging and skin conditions, and then give you that plan of the skincare routine that's super simple for what to do at home. And then maybe using things like photobiomodulation or other skin rejuvenation options in the clinic, what to do to address your skin goals, who to go to, what the approximate cost, recovery time. I work with a lot of men, a lot of celebrity men, actually, a lot of men who they don't want to have a lot of time off, and women who want to go about things in a cleaner way. Mm-hmm. And to have your time and money actually give you the results that you want. So InnoMed for 15% off at rachelvarga.ca. So getting back to the PVC piping situation, This is why you have to purify your water. Yeah. The amount of biofilms and particulates that accumulate in the water, drinking water piping is just horrific. If you've ever seen pipes cut in half, they never get cleaned.
No,
Once
people don't realize that. They're so old and so gross.
So essentially, distilled water is best. That's what we use in Chem Lab. That's what I used for years in Gen Chem, Organic Chem, and Biochem. And in the home, that's not as ideal. So there's more cost-effective reverse osmosis options. Then you can go a step further and you can remineralize your water, and you can then also structure your water using different energy tech devices. I think the future for slowing aging, living our best lives, being as pure as possible is frequency. Mm-hmm. Certain pathogens have a specific type of frequency. You know what that frequency is. You can basically turn that thing off. Seen it. And I'm very excited for what the future has in store. It's just our job to have our life's purpose. And if you're here to do some really important work, take the time to be as pure as possible so that you're continuing to do your work in the highest with the utmost integrity and with positive emotions. the more pure you are with air, water, lighting, electromagnetics, and organisms, the better your brain will work. The better able your mammalian brain is going to be able to outdo that reptilian brain, chatter, that higher brain stuff, that cast out and all this stuff. And your brain's working better, you're going to be better able to fulfill your life's mission and live your life in a place of joy and health and wealth and abundance and fun and prosperity. And you'll have the best hair, skin, nails of your life and slow cellular aging. So doesn't that sound pretty good?
I mean, listen, it's such a beautiful message. And then you add that cherry on top of you'll look great and be joyous, happy, abundant, all these things that we all want, right? And it's unfortunate. We kind of chase things a lot with our ego and kind of get into this rat race and get into the negative thoughts and complaining and, lose our purpose. And it shows, it really does. What happens on the inside, not just the physical biochemical stuff, but what is mentally there, what is producing this cascade of things that turns into biochemistry and then shows on the skin. So I'm really happy to hear that you're working with men to get them the bro glow, which you once coined for me when I was on your show. And I have been carrying that around everywhere, by the way, Rachel. Been like, you want a bro glow? You got to hydrate. You got to take care of yourself.
When I see a man like you, I see a radiant man. This is what I'm here to do. Research all this stuff. Here's some skincare, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, what I care the most about is how can we become humans when we enter a room and have everyone notice us for all the right reasons. We're not going to have bad body odor because we're not toxic. We're looking well kempt and well put together because we're using great body care products. Our hair looks good. Our outfit looks on point. And we're going to be better. We're going to be taken more seriously, essentially, than if, you show up looking all hippy dippy, smelling like patchouli. Trust me, I love those kind of people too. Don't get me wrong. However, when we show up like you are as your most radiant, high vibe version, that has a trickle down effect. People hear your message, they see how you're living, you inspire them to be better, which is one of the reasons why I've admired you so much over the last few years, Casper, because you really have been that voice of common sense. and the more people like you that are sharing really important information to help us be better, this will help make the world be a better place. And when we're more beautiful, when we're more pure, our intuition will be heightened. I work with a ton of intuitive empaths. I wonder why. Guess like attracts like. But enter the room, have people notice you for all the right reasons. That's what I really love to teach. When we have more beautiful, positive interactions with ourselves, that's going to have a trickle-down effect to other people, places, and things we interact with. So I'm not just about the superficial skin beauty stuff. I'm really about how can we be our most high vibe, beautiful, pure, radiant versions. And so employing what we've talked about here in this episode, air, water, lighting, electromagnetics, and organism detoxes all the freaking time. Start with baby steps, but trust me, couple of weeks, couple months in, you'll feel the difference. You'll be like, wow, glad I listened to that podcast with Casper and Rachel.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. You got to put your attention to this in a sense and understand it is all these holistic elements. It's every choice you make when you wake up and you choose to have a positive thought. That's what I just want to kind of expunge to people and get them to understand that you have so much power within you. But it's not all done by yourself. Also, I have this bro glow maybe because I listen to people like you, because I take advice from people that are much smarter than I am, are much better experts. I will say I'm not an expert. I'm a keen observer of experts. And I do have that intuition within me to understand what is best for me and not just asking others, what is best for me. I'll take that in. But so much of your work, that's why we do need experts too. We need people such as yourself because it's so hard to navigate what is good and bad. And the truth of the matter is you may be listening to it and saying, well, I look pretty good right now and I'm using all these things you're telling me not to, so I don't quite understand. The body's amazing at compensating, but only for a while.
It'll catch up.
Exactly. Your bucket will fill up sooner or later, right? And then you're going to be wishing you listened to Rachel Varga and her advice. So that is the reason to get started early, to prevent, to go into true anti-aging. Doesn't happen when wrinkles are already there. You could do that as well, but it's much better to catch it before it happens and utilize all your advice, all your tools, all your skill set and expertise so that it doesn't happen, so that you live long, have a bro glow, look beautiful. So thank you, Rachel, for all that you do and helping us with our bro glows and with our girl glows and everything else, because I do think it's truly what we see is only a reflection usually of what's going on inside. And it goes much, much deeper. If you have a good spirit, a good mind, it will show on the outside as well. So thank you so much for your, everything you're sharing with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Casper. It's always a delight to reconnect with you. And I can't wait to have you back on the Rachel Varga podcast.
I am coming back, and then we will see each other over at the Biohacking Conference. So I'm excited. I'm very excited for all this, a bright future ahead. And it goes to show that all things are connected. EMFs, light exposure, gut health, skin health. But true health lies in balance of all things. Check out Rachel Varga. That's RachelVarga.ca. Use code INNOMED, INNOMED, and do utilize her expertise if you want to be at your optimal health. Until next time, continue writing your own healing story.